Thanks, and I can definitely continue with that idea that you have, because it's sort of how the book came into being. Because I'm traditionally a political cartoonist, and so it's been my job torturously over the years to encapsulate these long, complicated narratives that the sort of the dominant culture and sort of the political elite attempt to confuse the general public with, which to me has always been a great frustration, because when it comes to politics and it comes to caring about one another and building a community that means something, it's really pretty elemental. So in the process of figuring out what my next book project was going to be for Akashic, they published my first book of essays and political cartoons. It just all of a sudden occurred to me that there are large narratives that might stand the treatment of a single page of art to try to encapsulate it. So it was a way for me to break out of banging my head against the sort of existential dread of politics over and over again, and focus on fiction or just well-known books that people know. Because I think I say it in the introduction. I say something about how words represent how we communicate with reality, but images represent how reality communicates with us. So I figured it would be a really interesting experiment to figure out what these long narratives that the general public seems to really understand and know in a broad way, and see if I could encapsulate that into single page imagery. And the original pitch for the book just had me doing it. And the publisher said, "Oh, that's a great idea." And I'm like, "Well, let's do it." Now this was, gosh, I think probably 6 years ago at this point. Because I was driving away and I said, you know what? The job is too huge. It's too huge for just a single person to take on, because it would involve me knowing a huge amount of books, which I'm fairly well read, but I'm by no means a genius that can tackle that project. So it was shelved for a number of years until recently, when the politics of now became especially daunting and especially overwhelming. I said, let me return to a different project where I don't have to think about politics for a little while. So I reintroduced the idea. I said, let me edit it. Let me get other, artistic comrades to contribute to this exercise, and we'll see what we can do with it. And so that's the book that I ended up making. And as I said to Lisa specifically, just a few seconds ago, the book started as we have a picture book that would be very New Yorker, and maybe you guys, we can talk about it at the end of this event. But if you read many of the books, if you know many of the books that were included in this volume, they're not, the subject matter is decidedly un-New Yorker. It's material that is very, very edgy and very, very controversial. So while I was trying to satisfy the publisher's desire for something that could be a picture book and then maybe a calendar, and maybe we can make umbrellas one day with it, it just wasn't going to happen, because if you know the book, I'm sure that you've all looked at it, you can see that there's some rather edgy, images in there. So it turned into the book that you now know, and the one that we are going to be talking about. So that's all. I just wanted to say that the process was long and arduous, and the only reason that I am the artist that is most prominent inside of this, because I was only going to do one image and just edit. It turns out it's a very, very hard thing to do, and this I want to talk to you poets about by and by through this event, because you probably have a similar experience when it comes to trying to encapsulate the meaning of something using words, which are limited. They're very limited. I find that my favorite kind of poetry is the kind of poetry that the meaning comes from what the words inspire you to think and feel. They're not really, to me, they're not usually embedded just entirely in the text. And that's a very similar process to how an artist approaches these things. So it's trying to say the unsayable and try to not let the words exist as these parameters that sort of that confine meaning. You want to explode meaning and sort of and allow the viewer or the reader to participate with their heart, not just their head. So that was part of the challenge of getting artists to know what that means. And in the process, I kept doing more and more examples for them because they kept asking for, well, what do you mean? You know, I would like to just do a narrative that sort of makes fun of a well-known book or a well-known character in a book. I'm like, that's not the project. We need to boil down and encapsulate the meaning. So I ended up just creating all of these examples. And then when it came time, I also rejected more than I accepted for this book. It just ended up, much to my literal shock, that I am far and away the artist that is more, you know, visible in the book. And it's not because I have a giant ego and that I just was elbowing people out of the way. It was just a very, very difficult job. And I think that as poets, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It is actually a struggle. It's a struggle to make something that looks like it was organically generated, that you want to lose your presence almost from the experience that you're sharing with people, because you want it to be universal. So you're trying to get out of the way of the experience. And that's the job of an artist too. So that's why they fit together so well. And that's why I'm also excited about what is going to be happening tonight, because I really can't wait to hear these poems.
Jay woke up in a fright while flapping wings all around him of a hawks and owls in shrill voice. They ordered him to go to the castle. He started walking through dusty roads and sharp hilly curves. Each time he stopped to wash his face and drink the muddy water, he noticed his handsome face shrunk into hollow eyes. He has turned into a frightening, hairy insect. When he looked in the puddles, he saw nothing. In great panic, Jay rushed into grey buildings by the road, the doors marked visible, to emerge shaken, not daring to look at his reflection. He fell asleep. In cornfields, farmers' daughters looked through him and heard he turned into donkey's path, skidding on their dung. Climbing, out of breath, he was amazed that he could hop from one rock to the other. And he stole a blanket to hide himself. All of a sudden, he was visible in a pond. An ugly insect. He's been on the road for 7 long weeks. All of a sudden, he heard the command, "Come." He reached the gigantic castle, faced the staircase of 3,000 steps. He encountered 2 giant owls perched on lion heads, staring fiercely. Climbing the stairs, he peeked into large lighted windows where suited men and women in fancy dances danced and dined, occasionally throwing out the window chicken wings, which he caught and ate fast. He dragged himself up, peering into huge ballrooms and numerous offices with workers running back and forth. On the next floor, he was frightened to see a semi-dark courtroom with lined prisoners dressed in orange against the wall. A tall deputy, waving his swords, all of a sudden faced the window and motioned for him to come inside. He fled the stairs. In the next floor, he saw to his horror firemen burning books in huge furnaces. And horrified, he went on and looked through the window of soft light shining into spacious rooms where he saw women dancing, motioning to him. And he mouthed, "Oh, Juliet, my first love. I'm so sorry." And then another woman turned around and he said, "Oh, exciting Anna Karenina. I'm sorry I abandoned you on the train." They motioned for him to come, and he couldn't. He looked at the window and saw an ugly, old, pathetic old man. And falling a few times before the staircase slanted and spilled him into a landing where a huge white hawk towered above, staring hard. Jay was paralyzed with fear when the hawk started flapping its wing, and he felt lighter. His scale vanished. His dirty blanket flew away. The hawk opened its wings, signaling to Jay, "Let us fly." And Jay tried flapping his tiny hands and fell, while the hawk took off and became a black circle, then a dot in the setting sun. A black judge's robe covered the sky. Jay stopped breathing.
I found her behind the empty museum near a huddled near a dumpster. She holds me in her generous lap, likes to take a chamois to me, does what she calls a spit shine. I tell her that being touched this way must be illegal. She jokes and says she likes that I am always hard. I don't get it. Yesterday, a small winged creature, the color of a summer sky before the fires, lighted near to us, and sadness stole her smile and her softness. The creature, she said, was made of flesh, of blood, and the last living song.
Writ moves across the mountain page, her cheeks puffy with the dust of Sinai, Egypt's mortar buried under her ragged nails. The light is similar to the dark, its texture of moon, sandpaper, and snakeskin. Writ moves slowly from Jerusalem to Babylon, Persia, Spain, out of Egypt. She misses a train again. Writ does not stop to taste the mirage. Writ jumps rope, a coarse braid made of horsehair and rooster breath. She kisses Liberty's chapped lips, her torch circled by movie projectors and hairspray. She pushes carts filled with potatoes and onions, overhears talk of Vegas showgirls. She pushes brushes and cigarettes, milk bottles and knives. Writ walks the cobbled streets of the Lower East Side, longs for a child, many children, shelter, something unbroken. Writ gets a nosebleed climbing a spiral staircase, a neckache, straining to see the skyscrapers. She looks where language melts into an open scream of no and why. She buys earplugs, goes into the matinee, where she sits and allows herself a good cry. Writ sells the movie to strangers after a long and bumpy flight to California with a man she calls Buddy. Buddy smokes cigars and golfs, buys Ralph Lauren ties while Writ gives birth, shops. He likes to pinch her ass when she peels stamps off envelopes. She has a hospital named after Bud when he dies. Writ, in exile from her own disaster, changes her name, crosses borders, crumbs of starlight in her eyes, death a dreidel around which children gather and gamble, shouting out Hebrew letters like snake eyes, old gypsy names, a toothache. Neither young nor old, Writ waits to womb the world. In between her ears, books are always burning. Until nothing is left but the sparkling ruby slippers of the Good Witch of the East and Dorothy's tornado dreams. Until nothing is left but the brain the size of a nut and a heart the size of a fist, floating in thinning blood, no flesh, no ribs. Until nothing is left but a ring that keeps slipping off a double-jointed finger, a nail you polish over and over again. Until nothing is left but the absence of a voice never spoken, lurking behind ruby red and polished toes, bearing the weight of 100 houses, the lives of all the children. Until nothing is left but shriveled feet, wrapped and stuffed to order, a shimmering tiara taking a walk along an extended stage, a showcase of packaged bones behind a dome of glass. Until nothing is left but the echoes of whistles, training us to foam at the mouth and fetch the desired bone. Until nothing is left but camouflaged flesh, beaten with words that are sticks made to disappear behind bruised foliage. Until nothing is left but an invisible war whose cruelties kowtowing flowers, stamped yellow grass, bulldozed forests, ruby-toed women hang down heavy from the weight of nothing, 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 until nothing is left but the space between the legs through which children come and go.
My blood flowed from an entire hemisphere. It was named for an Italian and called America. But there were hundreds of nations. There were the Eskimo in the north, in what is now Canada. Hello?
3 minutes.
There were the Mapuche in the south, in what is now Chile. The Aztecs built their capital on a lake and called it Tenochtitlan. They developed advanced methods of health care and traveled by boat with their floating gardens. The Inca built their empire along the Andes Mountains. They developed about 5,000 varieties of potatoes. They built structures fitting boulders perfectly to one another, and their roads stretched through the empire. Then came the Spanish, who lived with the Arabs for hundreds of years. The Spanish were just concerned with the basic necessities. They came to the Americas for gold, God, and glory. The Tainos they encountered, who lived in the Caribbean for thousands of years, were of little concern. They murdered thousands in their quest for gold. The Europeans brought something with them that was difficult to defend against. These were the diseases that wiped out 90% of the first nations of the Americas. However, the Mapuche and Guarani battled the Spanish for 300 years. This weakened the Spanish, and the French and British became dominant. However, The Spanish forced the Native Americans to mine under horrendous conditions for gold and silver that became the foundation for the international capitalist financial system. Just as the Spanish stole the gold and silver, the United States government stole half of the nation of Mexico. The Mexican owners of that land became second-class citizens. Then miners found gold in California. People from all over the world came to San Francisco. The native people of that land were pushed aside again in the search for gold. The Native Americans had difficulty understanding the white man. They knew how difficult it was to attain the necessities of life: food, clothing, housing, and medicine. It appeared that the white man only wanted gold. Then Chinese workers blasted through granite mountains to build the Transcontinental Railroad. Their work was indispensable to this project. Yet, after it was completed, the government adopted the Chinese Exclusion Act.
You know what? And I look right at it.
Then Mexicans, Filipinos, and Japanese worked the land of the Southwest. They did the backbreaking work under the hot sun so people could have food to eat. They worked in the canneries and meatpacking houses under horrendous conditions. Then the government built a wall and went on a campaign to deport illegal aliens. That's right, the First Nations who lived on this land, who built the foundation of international finance, who worked so that people would have food, now became illegal aliens. But on the island of Cuba, the people had enough. They only had work to cut the sugar cane for 3 months a year. Then they needed to find a way to survive for 9 months. Many women went to Havana and became prostitutes. But Fidel and the July 26 movement went to the mountains and started the revolution. Today, Cuba has more doctors per capita than any other nation in the world. Cuban doctors have gone to nations throughout the world to battle the pandemic. Yet the United States has a trade embargo against Cuba. President Donald Trump says this country is doing a great job. But the United States has become the epicenter of the pandemic. In Cuba, there have only been 102 pandemic-related deaths. So my name is Joaquín. Yo soy Joaquín. I found a way to overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. And here I am. Estoy presente. And I'm not going away.
Eat the rich, my comrades say. Here's my recipe for a capitalist cassoulet. 1 cup belly fat from a corpulent CEO, preferably from banking or manufacturing. Tech ones are sinewy and sometimes foreign flavored. 1 cup jowls from the elderly billionaire or famous retired actor who gave up on plastic surgery. 1 cup muscle-free thighs from the climate change denier, easy to spot on a mega yacht or a golf mogul. 1 cup rippling buttocks from the media mogul in the wheelchair. You may have to bribe the prison guard or rehab counselor. Scant 1/100th of a teaspoon from the bottle blonde third wife. More would overwhelm the dish with self-absorbing flavors. A pinch of the 50-ish first wife replaced by the trophy wife. The bitter tang will offset oily taste. May substitute 1 cup boardroom bologna for jowls, buttocks, or protruding belly. Broil, basting with martinis, margaritas, or mojitos. Best served cold to looters, accompanied by lead shooters.
The blackened shadow of this black invisible man cast upon the white backdrop of my dwelling. Hold fast to this image of me. in your mind's eye, for it is the last time that you will see me enter or exit this black hole that has become home to me. I ran from the races south, north, in search of a breath of fresh air, but found the same, just different white-faced men with an inability and an unwillingness to see me and color me human, black. For the label entrance to my descended black hole I call home has served me well as both revolving and Sally Port doors. Each of the doors features uniquely distinct. My revolving door has been the lever that powered the switch of my double-edged existence in your white world. Me, the nameless, featureless black man. When am I invisible or visible for me and the world to see? Now you see me, now you don't. On duty too, my Sally Port entrance has imprisoned me in my black hole, protected me from the white man and his horrible and unforgivable games as I lived cocooned inside in plain sight, right inside his midst, in a deep, dark, forgotten space where I found myself. My footprints and those of every black human to live or die by the white man's rule or by the white man's hand remains a visible, unaccepted invitation for you to take up a walk and live in any one of our footprints. My existence as an invisible man was brought to life as a literary expression by my creator, Ralph Ellison, over 68 years ago in a setting of over 88 years ago. From then to now, what has changed? Has anything changed in the white supremacy syndrome game? The greatest change that I can see is the flipping of the calendar pages, bringing forth the year of perfect vision, 2020. For the year perfect vision has come to reveal precisely what it was called forth to do, to take center stage and cast its perfect vision spotlight upon the perpetual existence of the great racial divide. For the image you were asked to hold fast in your mind's eye marked my departure to deliver a passionate eulogy for my buddy and friend, Todd Clifton. We shared the pages of Ralph Ellison's epic African-American fictional novel, Invisible Man. Todd was one of many invisible black men violently killed by the hands of white police officers, a quiet memory in comparison to the deafening catitude real-time cries of my people in the year of perfect vision, 2020. 2020 offers numerous ground truth accounts of police brutality before and since George Floyd's death took center stage as the white police officer posed proudly for the world to see yet another black brother killed by a white man's knee. Floyd's public execution was the straw that broke the black man's back and made the world to finally see the ways in which America holds fast and has redressed slavery and white supremacy. I am visible, you just refuse to see me. Our death at the hands of white men from yesteryear to yesterday has escalated 1,000-fold because in the year of perfect vision reveals both the white and black men should know better and should be better equipped. James Baldwin instructs Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. As we come to face this truth, both white and black men have a different view and a reality to confront. Baldwin's statement and question remains unaddressed. You, white man, created the Negro. The question remains why? Because if you need me to be a nigger, then you need him. Why did you create him? As I ascend this final time from my black hole, once my prison, home, and sanctuary, I walk free and visible to self and the world to see and hear this black man pose the question to his brethren for all of our pain and suffering inflicted upon the black man at the white man's hand. Why have we not taken up an unapologetic revenge?
I am here, yet you refuse to see me. You refuse to acknowledge me. And for all your high ideals, you deny me access. But I will find a way, even if it means walking in through the outdoor or climbing through a window. I will find my way. I am an unavoidable reality, the backbone of America. Yet you treat me as if I am invisible, a shadow relegated to the background. Oh, but what you neglect to notice is that I have substance. By your own decree, as little as one drop of my blood can overwrite the DNA of any race on this planet. I am your worst nightmare, the shadow of greatness to come, your black cat. You would do well to make note of the fact that my actions speak louder than your words. I am the engine of innovation that birthed the technology that preserves this country and the world's lifeblood. Charles Drew. I gave America's most favorite sons clean air to breathe. Garrett Morgan. Though much has been done to keep me and mine down, my son climbed to the top of the world. Matthew Henson. My daughter, blessed with such brilliance, made the moon this nation's springboard to the stars. Katherine Johnson. You may think me boastful, but I speak nothing but the truth. What more, you ask? I have a daughter who vocalized a masterpiece that spoke truth to America's hidden gardens of strange fruit. Billie Holiday. I have another daughter who, at the tender age of 6, stared down the vile hatred of Jim Crow in pursuit of her education, and in so doing, helped to break the fortified chains of segregation. Ruby Bridges. The lies you use to try to color me as invisible, I have painted over with truth and filled with such achievement, courage, and significance that it casts a shadow seen by even your eyes. I am an undeniable, enduring presence, a warrior of faith, willing to lead so that others like me need not fear, but instead have hope and feel empowered to follow in my great and determined footprints.
Judy Jock Judy, hitch kick your way to popularity, grapevine to Oz, bestride a wicked broomstick, surrender your gayness to the sky. Who needs a tornado? You got hormones and Arlen tunes, hustlers and straw men to fumble, touchdowns in the hay, field goals scored with brawn, broad shoulders, and ruby slippers, crew socks overflowing, the sweat smell of wrestling glory in the grass, snatching spheroidal pigskins, flying high, continuously tussling between your inside and outside selves. You know how to punt, to order wine, to pair carefully with succulent meat, lemon juice to lubricate, purple prose, lavender swell licking, romantic swallowing while the disgruntled janitors mop up, remove the muck of Oz, just muddy footprints, suggestions of a Godhead presence, a curtain life behind the tin can junk machine, the head tilt. You've heard this story before, but only allowed to tell it post 39. War reshuffling made it happen. Joker cards lionized, sheen warped plastic discarded like butch dreams, dog tags hanging from the necks of straight personalities, helmets and knee pads left behind in collapsing boxes with books that got you through adolescence with a Judy head, a camp earnestness, but what powerful quarterback haunches, an endless scrimmage with the world, betrayal of the sensitive poet with thick arms emerging from semi-autobiographical fiction, Judy Jock, Jock Judy, leaving Christianity behind in the West, heels clicking to the East, with the sass of an earring, cocked face, pursed lips matches camo war paint, bargain with the impotent wizard, doling out knickknacks and paddywhacks, bone playing in the matinee idol graveyard. Sell your soul to the first caress, macho huckster mistaking lust for love. He who appreciates a Judy face stuck on an Atlas body. Judy Jock, Jock Judy, there's no place, no home for either of you.
Eve. Masaccio gave her such pure sorrow. She settled his best work. The curve of her mouth's pain frescoed into the wet plaster. And her hands too he shamed, and hid one low to her side. And of marble's white weight, so convinced of her will, Rodin cut a scar to her skin's stone rib, and Uccello's fear of the known and unknown carved its way to her bones' reach, until by candlelight, and drawn inside by her longing, his last thoughts sure, dying Milton saw to her standing at the gate of the garden, hand in hand, and said, "Stay," daring then, in blind couplets, to write that she hadn't done anything wrong.
The first time I read Catch-22, I fell madly in love with it. It was on the war rack at Sam's Candy Store, up on Hegeman Avenue. I had just finished The Naked and the Dead, and at 15, I knew all there was to know of war. We were all super patriots then, my country, right or wrong, until LBJ in Vietnam came for us. By the time that war had ended, I'd read the book 8 times. I could recite the first chapter and learned that humor and misery might run in the same vein and at the same time. Catch-22 taught me to be wary of people in power, that when politicians offered a leg up, they rarely meant your leg. It taught me to be light on my feet, so when my time came, as it surely would, I might jump.
If poetry is a rival government, poets are its army not going into that good night. Marching in line breaks and jammed at police barricades, chanting alliterations, hurling sonic sonnets at militias, famous poets, unknown poets, poets who didn't even know they were poets yet, declaim in free verse for all, the mournful rebellious elegies, say the names of the dead. This ain't no metaphor, this ain't no simile, this ain't no metamy, just raw iambic pentameter, spewing out epitaphs for all of us.
Racism. Racism is a big little word. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's loud. But whether big or little, quiet or loud, it is always ugly. Racism is like a cage to the human spirit, trying to bind and constrict, limit, then deny the brilliance, the creativity, and sheer power of the human experience. There is no poetry in racism because there is no beauty in racism. It offers no hope, provides no justice, inspires no peace. Peace, as in a reflection of godliness, a beauty that celebrates the unconquerable character of those who push past the boundaries racism would seek to impose. The beauty inspired by individuals with the ability to study a problem from different angles, persistent enough to look at, in, around, over, and through any obstacle set forth by hate created by the small-minded. And however improbable, have the courage to spring forth and rise like a song, spreading its wings and taking flight clothed in God's grace, soaring ever forward to achieve the unscalable heights of life's true victory.